Hi everyone, James here. Welcome to Vinyl Memories number 2. This is the little slot where I talk about a particular album and the specific memories that it evokes. For this second instalment, I'd like to talk about this record here. This is the original soundtrack by 10cc. This is an original pressing from whatever year it came out. I suspect 1975. Something like that. There's the band. Yeah, 10cc from Stockport, a kind of what you describe as a post-Beatles band really. Eric Stewart, of course, from the band, went on to work with Paul McCartney. Graham Gouldman had had a kind of long, illustrious career even before they met up. He'd written for the Yardbirds, really talented guy. This record, I think, is a high watermark for them. It contains some really ambitious tracks. It contains One Night in Paris, which is like a sort of Beatles-y medley, Une Nuit à Paris, full of sort of, sound effects and strange little funny Monty Python-esque passages, sound effects. The album also contains the track I'm Not in Love, which was a kind of a real milestone studio song, really. It sort of predated sampling. They kind of recorded endless vocal parts and kind of layered them up. Originally it was a sort of quite an up-tempo bossa nova type tune, and they had the idea to slow it down and make it atmospheric with all these really feathery vocal samples. It was sort of the first time it had been done, really, where you actually created banks of sound, but not using instruments, using voices instead. Really, really ahead of its time. The album also contains the hit Life is a Minestrone, which is a kind of upbeat pop number, and a really great track called Blackmail. This is one of the first records I ever heard. It belonged to my dad. He had it in his collection. He didn't have a very big collection of sort of pop records, only maybe 4 or 5. Here's the story. He was given this record as a gift, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we used to live in this little kind of bungalow in a little village in the middle of nowhere until I was about 5 years old. Here's a picture. So that was the street where I actually lived, and I had a bedroom at the front of this little house, and it was only a tiny house. All the rooms were all kind of shoved together, and my parents, not often, they would have sort of parties or kind of evenings where they have, friends round. And I distinctly remember one evening being in my bedroom in bed and hearing the track Blackmail coming from the living room, and it contains possibly what I think is the scariest noise on any record ever. Hear it. It kind of leads into this kind of really mad slide guitar solo. A cop an earful. And the memory I have of that is of just being in bed, just quaking in terror underneath the sheets, thinking, I can't even begin to remember what I thought, but it was the most scary sound imaginable, really, really terrifying. I think I actually ended up crying and sort of getting out of bed and coming through to the living room. I'd never heard anything like it. The sound was completely unexplainable to me. I had no picture in my head of a guitar or anything. I just didn't know what could be making it. It sounded like a devilish sound. It's quite funny because 10cc are the most kind of mild group imaginable, really, kind of clever, ironic pop group, God knows what I'd have thought if I'd have heard something like Slayer or something, but that's part of what this album reminds me of. Also, the song I'm Not in Love holds great memories of just being at home in the family situation, kind of lovely warm feeling. But it does contain another memory, and that is years and years later. When I was at university, I got involved in a relationship with a girl, and it wasn't really going anywhere at all. It was a really bad relationship for us both. But I used to make her mixtapes, and I made her a mixtape that had I'm Not in Love on it by 10cc. And I'll always remember her saying to me, what a stupid song that is, I don't get that song. And I'd say to her, why not? And she said, well, I don't get it, because he keeps saying I'm not in love. And then he says, I I keep your picture on the wall, it hides a nasty stain that's lying there. And she'd say, you know, what a dick. Why is he saying that to her? And I kind of said to her, well, don't you get the song? It's this guy who is in love, and he can't bring himself to admit that he is. He can't face up to the fact that he's in love. He's trying to pretend to her, and also he's trying to maintain his dignity. You know, he doesn't want to admit that he's in love. And she just didn't get it. She honestly did not get it. And I thought to myself then, I'm not with the right person, you know. If she can't understand what that song is about, there's some kind of weird empathy thing, lack of empathy there with the male sex, you know. I don't know. So that's what that song really strongly reminds me of. Yeah, anyway. One last thing which makes this album significant, and it is the fact that it was a gift for my father. And if you look inside, there's an inscription here. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it. It says, to Bill, from one of your best friends who is ... and then there's a date written on there, the 11th of the 10th, 75. My dad worked with a guy he was just a young guy, and they were quite good friends, but it turned out that this guy was gay, but he hadn't come out, and he was worried. He was an only child, and he was worried, I think, what his parents were going to say. He was very anxious about it. This was back in the 1970s, when it was possibly harder to come out, you know, and he confided in my dad. And my dad and he had some sort of heart-to-heart chats about it, and my dad basically kind of coaxed him or helped him to get his head straight and to realise that the right thing to do was to sort of come out, tell his parents that he was gay, and that's what he eventually did. And I think there were a few problems along the way, but it kind of basically it turned out all right. And my dad's friend was really grateful to him, and that's why he bought him this record as a gift to say thank you. And that's what the thing means there. Your good friend who is ... and it's meant to be gay. But for years and years I had no knowledge of any of that. And I used to think, why has he put your best friend who is ... and left his name off? I always assumed that it was his name, and for some reason he didn't want to admit who he was and that he'd given my dad this, but in fact that's what it meant. So yeah, weird little story. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, folks. 10cc, the original soundtrack. That was Vinyl Memories number 2. Take care. Bye.